friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be March reading wrap-up, so the books that I read in March and kind of a quickie review of them, what I thought of them, and what they were about. So yeah, I guess we can just get right into it. So the first book that I read in March was called A English Ghost Story by Kim Newman. It was quite good. It was basically about a story, it was pretty cliche, but it was about a family that moves into a new house. The family kind of has a lot of problems and they aren't really getting along very well, but when they move into this new house they feel this like renewed sense of family, and you know that everything is going to be okay and they can work through it and blah blah blah. And then suddenly like weird things start happening in the house and it seems like the house is turning on them and blah blah blah. So it was pretty cliche. That's kind of like the classic like, let's just make this work even though the house is clearly haunted kind of story. But it was a pretty good read. It was spooky at times and stuff. So, and the characters were quite interesting, so I didn't hate it, but it's not like it was the most original story in the world. The next is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This book is actually one that I started reading a while ago, and I had to quit reading it because it was due back at the library and someone else had put a hold on it, so I couldn't just extend my loan or whatever. So I had to... So basically this entertainment company decided to film a mockumentary about how there are mermaids in the Marianas Trench. They had done a couple different mockumentaries about different things like Sasquatches and stuff like that, and so they decided to do mermaids, and so they decided they lived in the Marianas Trench. But the ship never made it back. Instead it was found floating as a ghost ship with no one aboard but signs of fight, like blood everywhere, stuff like that. And they were able to recover some footage, and in the footage it seems that they did find actual mermaids when they were in Marianas Trench, and they attacked and basically ate everyone on board or pulled them into the ocean. So they were like, well crap, this is not what we wanted to happen. We wanted a funny mockumentary. So now the book is about a second expedition that they're sending out, knowing that there's, you know, possibly monsters in the ocean, but also possibly not. It could have been a hoax, blah blah blah. And so they're sending out a bunch of scientists to go, and like a bunch of oceanographers to go and investigate. And so this story kind of follows their adventure there and basically find out the truth and do a little bit of research even if it is fake. So it's really excellent story. It's like, it's tense, it's exciting, it's really good. I really recommend it. I don't want to like say too much, although I guess the ending's kind of obvious, but it's really good. And the ending's not that obvious, and it's good. Yeah. The next book I read was Sweetness and Lightning Volume 1, which is a manga from, I'm gonna f this up, from Guido Amagakure? I'm sorry. I wish I don't know how to pronounce it and I don't have anyone here to correct me. I guess I could try googling it, but there's not a lot of information about this guy online. Yeah, so basically this story is about a single father and his daughter, and he's struggling to kind of raise her, mostly in the sense that he doesn't know how to cook and he's not very good in the kitchen, and so he doesn't know really how to feed her. He's been feeding her kind of prepackaged foods and stuff like that. And so one day he goes out to a restaurant to feed her, and he runs into this young woman who's actually a student at his school because he's a teacher, and she works at this restaurant with her mother, but her mother has been kind of busy with other things lately, like going on TV to be on a cooking show and random stuff like that. And so she's lonely and he doesn't know how to cook, and so she decides that they should learn how to cook together because she doesn't actually really know how to cook. It's mostly her mother. She just like works there as a server. And so they decide to kind of learn how to cook together. It was cute. It was definitely really cute. The little girl character is very adorable. She is like very lovable and loving and was really sweet. But as for the rest of the story, I didn't really find it compelling. It was just kind of them cooking recipe after recipe and nothing really happening as far as like the plot is concerned. Like the biggest thing that happened in the plot is they got better at cooking, and it's like I'm reading for the for the relationship and for like the characters, and they just happen to be like around the theme of cooking, but instead it's like you're reading about the cooking and there's a background story of the characters, which isn't really what I was looking for. The next book I read was Your One and Only by Adrienne Finley. This book was fascinating. It was a science fiction book set way in the future. Basically, all humanity has died off due to something called the slow plague, which basically sounds like we all just kind of died due to diseases that are already in existence in real world, like diabetes, cancer, you know, stuff like that. It just got worse and worse and worse, and more people got it, and so eventually they died off. The last remaining scientists that were working together on a compound to try to find a cure for the slow plague decided that instead that they were going to work on creating clones of themselves. And so they created clones from themselves, and the society that we are reading about in this book is basically a society where they're 100% clones. They're still 100% based off of the original, they call them the original 9 or the first 9 or something like that. And so basically what happens is every year they create a new generation but of the same exact clones. Like they just kind of, the only thing that they work on is making them more perfect, so making them more like immune to disease and stuff like that. And they've developed the ability to commune, which is basically when someone next to you feels an emotion, you feel that emotion too, like come off of them. So you're able to, it's basically like empathy, but instead of just like having to imagine it, you actually feel it. And so what happens is that they decide that they want to, the scientists in charge or whatever, decide that they want to bring back one human, using DNA and like genetic information that they have in storage, and bring him back and try to introduce a little bit more kind of variety into the gene system, because they're kind of running out of, it's kind of confusing, and I'm not like a scientist, so it's a little confusing, but basically they bring back this one young man who is supposed to kind of help them, because they've kind of lost the connection with humanity. Like they're barely humans, they're mostly robots at this point. And so they bring back the human to try to bring back humanity to the robots, but instead the robots reject him and say that he's too different, he's not one of them. And then all of a sudden their society is getting attacked, and crops are getting destroyed and things are being stolen and et cetera, et cetera. And so they assume that it's him, and the story is kind of all about that. And the reason why it's called Your One and Only, and it's like a love story, is one of the clones actually finds herself attracted to him but doesn't know what to do because she feels like she should be like her sisters and reject him. It was really good. I found it very fascinating. It was a little weak at points, but I would recommend reading it. And the last book that I read is the only book that I actually have with me physically because I had to return the other ones to the library, and that is Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. This book was okay. So basically the story is a single mother is found at the bottom of what's known as the drowning pool, which is a creek in a river that goes through town. She's found dead, seemingly from jumping or being pushed off of a nearby cliff. They don't know at the time whether it was one or the other. And so the story kind of follows the rest of the town as they kind of deal with the fallout and as they try to figure out what happened, and lots of different people's kind of dark secrets come to light in the investigation. And it's kind of all about, you know, it's a classic like small town. It seems like everyone like knows each other and likes each other, but secretly there's all these other things going on behind the scenes, and people are cheating on their wives, and people are, you know, doing this and that and the other thing. And so yeah, the reason why it's only okay is mostly because, first of all, it switches between a ton of different perspectives. There's probably like 8 or 9 characters that you switch between, which gets really confusing. Like, I find it confusing when books have a lot of characters anyways, but to try to remember whose perspective you're reading it from is even more confusing, because it's like, well, why is, I thought this was this person's perspective, so why is this other person talking to them like that? Oh wait, no, it's because it's this person's. Anyways, and it gets even more confusing because some of the different perspectives have different tenses. Like, some of them are in first person, some of them are in second person, some of them are in third person. And so it's just really confusing, which really brings you out of the story. I mean, the story was fascinating enough and it had like a really interesting ending to it, but it was just so hard to focus on what was going on because you were too busy trying to keep track of where you were, and yeah, it was really confusing. I liked it, and if you can get past that, then I definitely recommend it to you. But if you're someone who's distracted by kind of changes in the writing style, then I wouldn't recommend it at all. So there you go, the 5 books that I read this March. Let me know in the comments what you guys have been reading and if you recommend it to me. I love finding new books and new recommendations. And until the next video, later days.